Hello, dear students. Welcome to our second lecture series on strategic management, and I am your instructor, Dr. Jamal. In our first class, we talked about the chapter one. Today, we'll finish the chapter one. So, in our first class, we talked about the strategic competitiveness, the competitive advantage to maintain the above average return, right? Then we talk about S&P, the strategic management process, and then we talk about the competitive landscape and how the globalization and technological changes are shaping the competitive advantage landscape, right? So our today's agenda that we are sharing some light on our model that we talk about that we will do that in our next class is the industrial organization model, and then we talk about the resource-based model, and then we'll share some light on vision, mission, and what are their values, talk about stakeholders, and we'll talk about how much they have the ability to influence the organization. And then we talk about work of a strategic leader, who is strategic leader and what are the duties or work they perform. And at the end, then we ended up explaining the whole process and of course giving you a assignment which is a case study, right? So let's talk about our today's first learning objective, which is the IO model or industrial organization model. So industrial organization model, it adopts an external perspective to explain that forces outside of the organization represents the dominant influence on firm's strategy. So the logic of IO model is that the profitability potential of industry or a segment, as well as the action firms should take to operate profitably, are determined by the characteristics of the industry. For example, economies of scale, barrier to entry, diversification, product differentiation, degree of concentration in the firm of the industry, and the market friction. So, in other words, this model presumes that the characteristics of and condition present in external environment determine the appropriateness of the strategies that are formulated, implemented in order for firms to earn above average return, right? And these are the characteristics. So IO model suggests that the returns are influenced more so by the characteristics of external environment than a firm's unique internal resources and capabilities. So in short, the IO model specifies that the choice of industries in which to compete has more influence on the firm's performance than the decision made by managers inside their firms, right? So let's talk about the assumptions of IO model. So there are four assumptions. Number one, the external environment imposes pressures and constraints that determine the strategies that would result in above average return. So in other words, the external environment pressures the firm to adopt strategies to meet that pressure while simultaneously constraining or limiting the scope of strategies that might be appropriate and eventually successful. Number two, most firms competing in an industry or in segment, they control similar sets of strategy relevant to the resources, thus pursue similar strategies. All right. So this assumption basically it presumes that given a similar availability of resources, most firms competing in a specific industry have capabilities and thus follow strategies that are similar. So there are few significant differences among firms in industries. Third is, firms assume that their resources are highly mobile, meaning that any resources differences that might develop between firms will short-lived. So which means any resources uh, which the different resources, they soon disappear as they are observed and acquired or learned by other organizations in the industry. Our last one is, organizational decision makers are rational individuals who are committed to acting in the firm's best interest, which means maximizing the profit of firm, ultimately leading to shareholder wealth, right? So basically, it implies that organizational decision makers will consistently exhibit profit making behaviors. So the IO model challenges firms to find more attractive industry in which to compete. Of course, we are talking about maintaining competitive advantage. And one of the key feature of competitive advantage, why pursue that? Earn above average return. So according to the model of IO, firms must pay careful attention to the structure characteristics of the industry in which they choose to compete. So, in order to compete, the firm must be able to successfully implement strategies required by the industry's characteristics to be able to increase their level of competitiveness. So, the five forces model of competition is an analytical tool firm use to find the firms, uh, the industry which is more attractive. They are, number one, suppliers, buyers, competitors or competitor rivalry, product substitutes, and potential entrants to the firm. So this looks like a Porter Five Forces model. If you happen to study in uh, some other books like business, organizational theory, right? So the firm can earn average return by producing either standardized product or either differentiated product. Differentiated product for which customers are willing to pay higher price or premium price. And if you make these kind of products, so it means you are following differentiation strategy. While standardized product in which you are focusing on controlling the cost, hence we call this cost leadership strategy, right? So let's talk about the model here. So based on our earlier these four assumptions, let me talk about it. The IO model prescribes a five-step process for the firm to achieve above average return. Number one, study the external environment. So in general, the industry competitiveness, the characteristics of external environment that will both determine and constrain firms' alternative strategies, right? And the second one is locate an in-depth industries with a high potential for return based on the structural characteristics of the industry. So we'll talk about this in chapter 2. The third one is strategy formulation based on the characteristics of industry in which the firm chooses to compete. Strategies that are linked with above average returns should be selected. So a model or framework that can be used to assess requirements and risk of these strategies. We will talk about this mostly in cost leadership and differentiation strategies, mostly in chapter 4. Right? Fourth one is acquire or develop the critical resource needed to successfully implement the strategy that has been selected. So, process of scrutinizing the internal environment to identify the presence of critical skills that we will discuss in chapter number 3. So, skill enhancement strategies, including training development, will be discussed over there. The fifth one is the strategy implementations, which we normally talk about in from chapter from chapter 10 to 30. So this IO model, it indicates the above average return that will accrue to firms that successfully implement the strategies. So when we go to this chapter number 10 to 13, we'll talk extensively over there. So what are the viability of this IO model? So remember, the IO model has been supported by many research. So, for example, 20% of firms' profitability can be explained by the industry characteristics. Industry characteristics. 36% of the profitability can be attributed to firms' characteristics and action taken by the firms. 36%. So the overall, this indicates that a reciprocal relationship between industry characteristics and firm's strategy exist that results firm's performance, right? So it is proven, backed by many researches as well, right? So next is our resource-based model. A resource-based model, it adopts an internal perspective to explain how a firm's unique bundle or collection of internal resources, capabilities, represent the foundation of which value creating strategy should be built. So basically it based on internal perspective, right? So the uniqueness of the resources and capabilities is based on firm's strategy and its ability to earn above average return. So name implies resource-based model. So let's just talk about what do we mean by resources. So resources are basically inputs from use in productions. They can be anything of a monetary value, ranging from skills, capitals, patents, finances, talented managers. So if we broadly categorize, so we can categorize that into 3 major categories: physical capital, human capital, organizational capital, right? So, did you notice something that resources not only are physical in nature and they are also intangible as well, right? Talented managers, patents, intangible. So, resources, they have the greater likelihood of being a competitive advantage when integrated to form a capability, which means set of resources to perform task or activity in integrative manner, which is a combination of resources. So thus, according to the resource-based model, a firm's resources and capabilities found in its internal environment are more critical to determining the appropriateness of strategic actions, right? So the strategies that should be selected enable the firm to best exploit its core competencies. What are the core competencies? They are capabilities that serve as source of competitive advantage over its rivals, right? Our next slide is based on the assumptions of the resource-based model, and there are four assumptions of this model. Number one is the differences in firms' performance across time are due primarily due to unique resources, capabilities rather than structural characteristics of the industry. Firms acquire different resources and develop unique capabilities based on how they combine and use the resources. And resources and capabilities are not highly mobile across firms. They cannot be easily transferred to one company to another company. The fourth one, differences in resources and capabilities are basis of competitive advantage that just we talk about in our earlier slide. So as a source of competitive advantage, a capability must not be easily imitated, and if they want to imitate, it is very much expensive, not cost effective at all, and very complex as well, right? Not to you, but to your rivals. So let's shed some light on our resource-based model. So figure 1.3. So the resource-based model of above average return is basically is grounded in the uniqueness of the firm's internal resources. So the five-step model, they link or they provide linkages between resource identification and strategy selection. Which strategies which give you above average return. So it starts from identify firm resources, which means their strength and weaknesses, because we talk about that the resource based model, they are internal resources. So internal are mostly strength and weaknesses, and strength and weaknesses relative to competitors. Number two, the firm should identify the set of resources that provide the firms with the capabilities that are unique relative to competitors, and the firm should identify those capabilities to perform tasks and activities better than their competitors. The third one is firms should determine the potential for their unique set of resources and capabilities to outperform to outperform of their rivals in terms of return. Determine how a firm's resources and capabilities can be used to gain competitive advantage. The fourth one is locate an attractive industry. Determine the industry that provides the best fit between characteristics of the industries and your resources and capabilities. The last step is to attain a sustainable competitive advantage, earn above average return by formulating strategies, implementing strategies that enable them or enable the firm to exploit their resources to take advantage of the opportunities in the external environment better than their competitors. That's very important point because resource-based model is internal, exploiting internal opportunity is for internal strengths and weaknesses so that you can exploit opportunities in external environment. All right. So from here we know that the resources and strengths, resources and capabilities, they have potential advantage to lead the firm to competitive advantage. So sorry about that. So resources and capabilities, they have potential to be foundation for competitive advantage when they are number one vulnerable, which means resources are vulnerable when they support taking advantage of opportunities and neutralizing external threats, right? Number two, when resources are rare, which is possessed by few, all right? So when possessed by few, so whatsoever is your competitor, you still have the advantage. Number three, resources are costly to imitate. If other person cannot find it or it's very costly for him to obtain, and for you it is inexpensive, you still maintain above average return and you maintain competitive advantage. And remember, resources are non-substitutable. Your competitors may not find it some other equitable or equivalent substitution for your product or for your competitive advantage, right? Okay, so that's our resource-based model. Now, moving towards our next learning objective is describe vision and mission and their value as well. So I'm going to take you back to our lecture 1, figure 1.1, in which we talk about the SMP, strategic management process. So remember, the strategic management process, which indicates the link or the relationship between firms' internal resources and capabilities and condition and characteristics of external environments, right? To develop organizational vision and mission. So, what do we mean by vision and mission? So, let's talk about it. Vision and mission. First, key purpose of vision and mission statement is to inform stakeholders why the firm is constituted, what it seeks to accomplish, and to whom it serves. So the foundation of for the vision and mission is that the firms needs to choose and implement one or more strategies. So let's just share some light on vision. Number first, vision is a picture of what the firm wants to be and, in broader terms, what it wants to achieve. Bigger picture. So it's a bigger picture, thinking with passion that helps people feel what they're supposed to be doing. A vision statement should be articulating the ideal description of organizations and give shapes to its intended future. And also, it reflects the firm's value and aspirations. The vision tend to be very short and concise in one or two lines, that's it. For example, let me write it down for you one more. For example, McDonald's. Their vision statement is that our vision is to be world best quick service restaurant, right? Similarly, if you talk about the Ford vision, so they say that to make automobile accessible to every American, right? Back to our vision one. So what is the effective vision which stretches and challenges people? So a vision, for example, normally the vision is developed by the CEO, top level managers, and employees, suppliers, customers. Basically, it stretches out to every stakeholders. We'll talk about what what do we mean by the stakeholders in our coming slide. And also the vision is consistent with the decisions and actions of those involved in developing it. So a vision statement should be clearly tied to the condition in the firm's external and internal environment, and it must be achievable. Like I told you, the McDonald vision statement or best quick service restaurant, achievable, right? Now, let's just talk about the next step, which is mission. So a firm's mission is an external, externally focused application of its vision, right? The vision is about the bigger picture, how people think of it, while the mission is an externally focused application of its vision, which basically states the firm's unique purpose and scope of its operations. A firm's mission specifies business in which the firm intends to compete, the customers it intends to serve. So, mission is more concrete than a firm's vision, should be established in a firm's individuality, should be aspiring and relevant to all stakeholders, deal more directly with the product and customers, should be developed by CEO, top level managers, and other organizational members. It has higher probability of being effective when employees have a strong sense of ethics. In simple sense, firm's vision and mission must provide the guidance that enables the firms to achieve desired outcomes so that you can maintain strategic competitiveness and above average return that we talk about in our S&P, right? Appropriate strategic management process ultimately leads to above average return. Now, what do we mean by stakeholders? The stakeholders are the individuals, groups, organizations that can affect the firm's vision and mission, and they are affected by the outcomes of the firm, and they have enforceable claims on the firm's performance as well. They are all the you know individual groups or organizations that are affected by firms' decisions. So government, employees, suppliers, stockholders or shareholders, they are all called the stakeholders. So if we talk about the classification of stakeholders, so firms can separate the parties involved with their operation at least into three groups. Number one is capital market stakeholders. Number two, product market stakeholders. Number three is organizational stakeholders. So the most obvious stakeholders, not in just US, of course, if the company is not owned by the government, so they are stockholders, individuals who invested their capital with the intention to receive some return on their investments in the form of shares, right? So let's talk about all these three stakeholders. So we have a figure 1.4 here. So capital market stakeholders, they are the one who provide capital to the firms. So we know that assets is equal to liabilities plus owner's equity. So assets are mostly financed through outsiders and insiders. Insiders, they are called shareholders. Outsiders, they are called lenders, which are like banks, those who purchase companies' bonds and all the stuff. All right. So what are their primary expectations from the firm? So how a company, how an organization can satisfy these capital market stakeholders? Number one, shareholders, how they can satisfy their primary expectation. So what are their primary expectation? To create wealth, increase their wealth, maximize their investment in the form of shares, or increase the share market value, right? While the perspective of lenders, their primary expectation is the wealth preservation. They want to preserve their wealth, which means they are concerned with their principles that they have given the firm huge amount of loans. Their money should be protected, so the company are not supposed to take extra risk, so that they may lose their principal amount, right? On the other hand, there are product market stakeholders, and these are customers, suppliers, host communities, and unions. So, what are the primary? Let me just, I think I can zoom it or not. Let's do that. Oh, yeah, I can zoom it. So, if you pay close attention here, so primary customers, their expectation is product reliability at lower possible price. Of course, law of demand says that price goes up, quantity go down, price goes down, quantity go up, right? Suppliers, on the other hand, they will follow the law of supply. What is law of supply? Law of supply is price goes up, quantity supplied goes up. So they want to receive highest sustainable prices. So what are those host? So what are those host communities? So host communities, they are long-term employment, permanent employees. Also, they can be governments because they want to collect revenue from you. Right? Also, those NGOs who are supporting the public cause, like uh, educating the undeserved people, giving them laptops. They came to you and asked help to fund laptops to those who are deserving, or students, right? Scholarships, this kind of stuff. The third one category is organizational stakeholders. So these are employees, either managerial employees or non-managerial employees. And what are their expectations or demand from the organization? They want to secure their job, all right, and they want a rewarding environment, right? So it's very hard for the firm to maintain a balance between all the stakeholders, because all the stakeholders, they have different demands, right? So when earning average above average return, a firm generally has the resources to satisfy all the interests of the stakeholders, which means the firm must satisfy each stakeholders group's minimal expectations. And of course, if you want to focus on capital market stakeholders, of course they want to get higher returns. But remember, high return leads to high risk as well. When high risk are taken, then of course the loan providers or lender, they become quite unrest, that okay, our principal is now at high risk. So you need to maintain a balance. So that's why you focus on minimal expectations, right? Similarly, if we talk about the product market stakeholders, so customers, they seek reliable products on lower prices, while suppliers, they seek high prices. Host communities, they want, you know like government, they want high taxes, or stable tax revenue from you. Public supports group, they want a public support from you. Unions and all the stuff, right? We just talk about it. So you need to maintain a minimum expectations. You need to fulfill their minimum expectations. So if we talk about the organizational stakeholders, so all are the employees. The managers, they want to continue their work, secure their jobs, and also they want a rewarding environment as well, because they are working for the organizations, they are running the organization, and they expect a reward system. Similarly, the lower employees, they want to protect their job as well, they want to be getting paid on time, Of course, they want their hourly rate to increase. And also the employees, they want to work with growing company as well, so that they know that if I work for 10 or 15 years, so after 15 years, the organization may not, go exit from the market or go bankrupt or just close. So you need to think about that. Are the critical to the organizational success when they learn how to use new knowledge productively? Whether the organizations are spending enough on employees training and development, right? So here comes the concept of leaders, which helps the employees understand competition in the global competitive landscape through internal assignments, right? Like I told you, the organizational stakeholders on employees is like they want to learn how to use the new knowledge productively, right? So leaders, they must use firm's human capital successfully to serve day-to-day needs of the stakeholders. That's very important. So we're gonna talk about that in our coming slide, and that is the strategic leader. So whenever you see the word strategic, so remember these are not for short term, they are the one who plans for long term. So whenever you read the word strategy or strategically, so it's not about the short term, it's always about the long term. All right. So who are the strategic leaders? They are the people located in different areas and level of the firms using the strategic management process to select actions that help the firms to achieve its vision and fulfill its mission. So organizational culture also affect these leaders and their work as well. For example, the size of the organization also, depend. If the big company, they have a whole hierarchy of top managers, middle level managers, right? So it depends on the size of the firms. So all firms have CEO, top level managers, and this individual is the primary organizational strategist in every organization. In small companies, normally they are CEOs or the owner, while in large companies, they are fewer top level, you know, more than one top level managers. We call them executives, top management teams, and they have a specific name under the category of organizational strategists, which lead the firm or to the new boundaries. Like if I give you the example of Samsung entering into mobile phone industry, as Samsung was a home appliance company. So the culture also affect the strategies. If culture is too tight, the leaders, their hands are tied, they cannot lead the organization to the new boundaries. So it is a social energy that derives or fails to drive the organization. The last one is how strategies, strategic leaders, they work. Sorry about that. So though it seems very simple, performing their role effectively requires strategists to work hard, perform through analysis of available information, and they have to be sometimes brutally honest. All right? Brutally honest. So a penchant for wanting the firm and its people to achieve success. So in addition, they must be able to think seriously and deeply. All right. So strategists, they must have a strong strategic orientation while embracing change in today's dynamic competitive landscape. So they work really hard hours and they face ambiguous decision situations, but they also have opportunities to dream and act in the concern with a compelling vision that motivates others in creating competitive advantage. They have high global mindset as well. All right. So for the last part, for the strategic management process, the strategic leader, it serves the organization as a decision path to firms' efforts to deal successfully with their challenges. So we talked about in our first lecture the strategic management process, start from analysis, and then strategy, and then performance, right? ASP model. So from time to time, we'll talk about from the next 12 chapters all of this strategic management process. So here comes the end of our chapter 1. So we will be having a case study analysis, uh, Starbucks case study analysis. So I would be uploading to our group. So already the questions are being provided and you need to answer it. So that's all for our lecture 2. So see you next time in our lecture 3. Until then, take care. Bye bye.